Summer routines live or die by how easy they are, and honestly, if something takes too much effort, I'm out. That's why Groons is my go-to. It's my one daily pack of gummies covering my greens, vitamins, and minerals. Plus, it has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber, which is more than 2 cups of broccoli. No mixing powders, no giant pills, no hassle. I just rip open the pack and I'm done. They taste good and they make it easy to stay on top of my health, even when life gets busy. Save up to 52% with the code PODCAST at Groons.co. That's code PODCAST at GRUNS.co.
Welcome back to the Viking Update Show. This is one of the editions where we welcome in Alec Lewis, who also does a million podcasts a week for TalkNorth.com. We're very lucky to have him on board. We have 3 Viking shows we can offer you. The Viking Update Show, that's this, Alec Lewis Show, and Jeff Diamond's Vikings NFL Insider with the former Vikings general manager. Jeff is especially good on salary cap machinations and everything else. Today, cool roundtable, John Krawczynski, Alec Lewis, and myself, Jim Souhan. Viking Update Show is presented to you by Onyx Hunt, and we're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services Studio. All right, Alec, you and I haven't talked in a while. Tell me what you're thinking about the general manager job and whether Rob Brzezinski has a chance to keep it, and if he doesn't, where they might look.
Yeah, we were at the owners' meetings last week in Arizona at the swanky Biltmore Hotel.
I've been there.
My colleague, Dane Mizutani, or someone I work with closely, Dane, who writes for the St. Paul Pioneer Press, we're sitting inside, and he asked Rob, directly, do you want the job? And Rob said, I could give you all the cliches. And then you thought he was going to go against the grain, and you thought maybe he'll be revealing here, and then he just gave all the cliches. So Rob Brzezinski has not stated plainly that he wants the job, and I'm not sure. I mean, you talk to people like, what is the upside of doing that versus the downside? I mean, does it make sense when you're as focused as he is on the short term to state publicly that you want it? I'm not quite so sure, but I would say, like, you talk to people internally, there's a lot of faith in how they've done their processes and how they've operated the last few months. Mark Wolf at the owners' meetings was also like, look, we're going to get through this draft and then be pretty expeditious with how we go about the process. I think they'll do some interviews. I think they'll sit down with Rob and hopefully get a more direct answer to that than we did at the Arizona Biltmore in terms of whether or not he wants the job, and then kind of go from there. But it remains interesting, I think, to people inside and outside the building that they're about to have this draft without a full-time GM. I say it remains interesting. That's probably one word to describe it. There are many others.
It makes no sense. Let's just say it. It makes no sense to do it this way unless you really do believe that Rob Brzezinski is going to be the guy, which is totally possible. Like, I think that oftentimes you will see an organization that they went outside the box with Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, and they had to pull the plug on him much sooner than they have shown they have ever wanted to do. They are a very deliberate, pragmatic ownership group that doesn't like to make these big changes if they don't have to, that wants continuity and consistency. It did not work. And so there is a natural inclination, I think, sometimes to, okay, we try to do something we didn't know. Now let's go back to what we do know. And we do know Rob Brzezinski. And so a lot of that would make sense. And that would be something I'd be fine with. But if it doesn't do that, if they don't do that, if they go outside the organization and hire a new GM after a critical draft, it makes zero sense to me.
By the way, I got to tell an Arizona Biltmore story. I'm covering the NFL meetings there one time, and feel like, especially at that point in my life and career, felt like I was going to get thrown out of the joint on general principles just for being in the lobby. And I'm hanging out with all my NFL writing buddies, and we're kind of waiting for another owner to come out and give us all the cliches, as Rob said. And Will McDonough, one of the first true information national reporters, one of the first kind of, Adam Schefters, I guess, comes walking out of the pool area, and he's wearing a swimsuit, and he's dripping water, and he's wearing a T-shirt, and he's an old, beat-up-looking guy, and he looks at it, and he goes, and he's like surrounded by his grandkids. This is a freaking vacation for him, right? And he looks at me and says, y'all got to get to the point where they'll just call you in the freaking room. It's like, thanks, Will. Yeah, thanks.
Good tip.
I'm going to go back to my hotel room now and just sit around and wait for, Red McCombs to call me. That'll be great. Thank you very much, Will. Listen, I've known Rob forever. Johnny, I think you've known Rob forever. Alec, you cover him on a daily basis. Let's start with Alec. How has he handled this very awkward situation other than offering cliches? I mean, what's the internal view of how he's handled it?
Yeah, it's been really positive. And I think that's from, people on the coaching staff. I think that's from people in the personnel department. I think that's from people on the business side. There has been a pretty consistent, review of just the processes. It just feels like he's been very pragmatic with every decision they've made and every process they've put in place. And if one way to look at it would be if Rob Brzezinski was so committed to providing to either like the public sector or the ownership that he's deserving of this job, they probably would have been more aggressive in free agency. He probably would be in the media much more and wanting more stories and TV interviews, et cetera. And they've really refrained from making any rash decision, for the short term and taking a very long-term approach and process with all of their decisions. And I think that's been appreciated by a lot of people internally. So, it's funny when he sits with the media and is on the record, that's not something he's ever done, or it's not something he's done often over the course of the last 20 years. And I guess this is a little inside baseball, but we sat down with him and one of the first things was like, where do you guys stand with Jordan Addison? And he's like, we're just going to pick up that 5th-year option. And it's like, is that news? Can we go with that? And he's like, I should probably call Tim Younger, Jordan's agent. So it was like, there's some of that to him, but there's almost there's almost just an organic nature to how he's operated that, again, I think a lot of people appreciate and respect, and it garners trust pretty immediately.
Yeah, I think I would just say knowing Rob, it makes a lot of sense that they've gone this way right now in terms of if you hear that Kwesi had a hard time building relationships in the building, garnering trust and kind of respect that way. You've just his personality and the way that he works. That was a weakness of his, where that is such a huge strength of Rob. Like, he is personable as the day is long. Like, he really has a human element to him that can help in these situations. And like, when you have an organization that might be a little frayed after Kwesi kind of comes and goes, that to have someone that knows how to just rebuild and communicate with everyone on a human level makes a lot of sense. And there are very few people probably who in this position could be trusted to make the decisions for like the best long term, and not just, like Alec was saying, make themselves look good or make them look busy and all those things. But Rob is one of those guys that will go about this the right way, whether they make the right draft picks or whether these decisions that are made end up working out. I think, who knows? But the process behind it with Rob leading the way, I think, will be honorable and upfront and above board. And so, he checks all of those boxes. If you're going to go into this nebulous type of a setup, which again I think is a mistake, at least you're making the best possible mistake you can make by having a guy like Rob, be the steerer of the ship.
Best possible mistake: the story of the Minnesota Vikings.
Should be the title of this. It should be a Viking update.
Actually,
show.
You're right.
The best possible mistake is
the way you phrased it too was so. It was just so eloquent. It was like, I guess you're gonna. It is crazy. Now, I will say, you talk to people around the league, and they're like, yeah, it's pretty wild. They're just going to make 9 picks that are huge. And like, he might be the guy and he might not be.
They're signing a quarterback. Like, the most important thing in the world. Like, it's not like they have Joe Burrow already. Like, they need the most important position and they have 9 picks. And they've got they've got no long-term leadership. It's incredible.
It is. And I think the last time I interviewed Rob, like for the record, I think it was after Frank Gilliam's death. And of course, he spoke glowingly about Frank Gilliam, who's a legend. But he also, toward the end, he's like, just started talking about the fact, God, this is why we got to go win a Super Bowl. We got to win a Super Bowl for Frank Gilliam, for all of our former players, for all the people who poured so much into this. And it was really heartfelt. It wasn't just like PR stuff. It was really heartfelt. I didn't really ask him that specific question. He was like, please, this organization's got to find a way. So his heart is absolutely in the right place. That being said, he's not really a personnel expert. So who is the personnel expert you think he will rely on the most, Alec?
Yeah, I mean, I think for this upcoming draft, and through free agency, but it's unquestionable that they have leaned very heavily on this coaching staff. I mean, if you looked around the country at all these pro days, yes, you're going to have your scouts, your Steve Sabos and your Blaine Grimmers and all these guys are out on the road, but you're also going to see the coaching staff, whether it is Ryan Nielsen or the new defensive line coach, or whether it's Pat Hill, the assistant D-line, like these guys have been on the road. I guess to answer your specific question, Jim, I mean, Kevin O'Connell will have a massive voice in this upcoming draft. Defensive coordinator Brian Flores, with how intricate his system is and will be, is going to have a major voice. And then it sounds like Mike Charlatan, the longtime director of college scouting, is going to lead some of these meetings. So I think for the short term, that's kind of been the plan. I mean, I find it, and I'd probably be curious what you guys think. Like I think in the initial aftermath of Kwesi Adofo-Mensah being let go, you hear a lot of like they need to find a personnel person. They've got to find a personnel person. It's kind of interesting to me. Like if you look over the course of the league, how many super scouts really exist? Like how many guys are able to just evaluate at a tier above everybody else? And so for me, the way I think about it is like, more than that, can you find somebody, whether it is Rob or somebody else, who is a leader that can galvanize every aspect of this organization with a lot of voices involved, a lot of ego involved? Like that should be the focus. For me, in my opinion, more than just finding a super scout, a guy who aligns a draft board. Maybe I'm looking at that wrong, but it's kind of, it also felt like Mark Wilf was kind of saying that a little bit at the owners' meetings as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the biggest mistake that teams can make, I would say, is to overcorrect from the last hire and just be like, well, we had an offensive coach last time, we have to go defensive. Well, we had a players coach this time, now we need a disciplinarian. Oh, we had an analytics guy leading our front office, now we need a dyed-in-the-wool scout. So maybe that's the case. Maybe there is someone out there that they find that is just great talent evaluator, incredible in the draft, and that's the way to do it. But I think if you limit your search that way, you could end up leaving someone really good off the table. And so in some ways they just have to trust the process that they go through and find the right guy. But I agree with you, Alec, that I think it's much more of a CEO position, of a leader of the whole organization, and someone who can identify talent underneath them, scouting, analytics, coaching, like all of the different branches. And then this is the trunk of the tree. And everything kind of grows from that. Like, I think that is an ideal situation in this NFL world now, where staffs are enormous, where there's so many resources that are poured into it. I don't think the priority has to be that guy, but the priority should be finding someone who, if he isn't that guy or that woman, that they find the right people underneath them that can make the Vikings draft process much more productive than it's been.
I have a perspective on this. I'll offer it in 1 second. We do want to remind you we're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services studio.
When something goes wrong at home, Aquarius Home Services makes the solution easy with one call to one team and no hassle to find a different handyman or company for each type of job. Aquarius has experts in heating, cooling, plumbing, and electrical. That means you get the right expert every time and solutions you can trust. Right now, enjoy $98 off any heating, cooling, plumbing, or electrical repair. Aquarius, one call, problem solved. Earning the right to be recommended. Schedule today at AquariusHomeservices.com.
We also want to tell you about Onyx Hunt and Onyx Fish. Stop fishing the same lake because it's the only one you know. Onyx Fish lets you filter lakes by species, abundance, trophy, and keeper potential so you can make a smarter call on where to spend your Saturday before you ever hitch up the trailer. It's only $34.99 for the year, less than a spool of good braid. Download Onyx Fish on the App Store or go to onyxmaps.com/fish and fish smarter this season. So, probably the best scout I've ever covered on a daily basis was Terry Ryan when he was running the Twins. He was a dyed-in-the-wool, sit behind home plate with the jugs gun for 12 hours a day, go to the high school game just in case, the next Derek Jeter is playing for the local high school. And yet when he became general manager, he deferred to his scouting director. He deferred to the regional scout. So he had all this expertise. He also didn't think you could be a scout when you're sitting in that seat. So I think it's much more important to be able to hire good scouts and know how to read their reports than it is to be a scout.
And I'll also say when you have these conversations, like as much as it can often be, how well do you watch film? How well do you analyze? Some of it is just relationships of like, how do you know the Alabama GM? Do you know the Oregon offensive coordinator? And will they give you whether Kenyon Sadiq is an exceptional person beyond the player and has the work habits? And I mean, John could probably speak to this a lot with Tim Connolly and like those relationships. I mean, it feels like, it sounds like that is so much of his strength. I mean, I will also say this just because we're on the subject. I mean, the name George Payton still comes up for me when I have conversations with people. And I was talking to a coaching agent last week, and it just sounds like there is a lot of still reverence from Vikings ownership about the person and the executive that George Payton was and is. He's obviously still under contract with the Denver Broncos, and from every public comment, whether it's Sean Payton or George, like it does sound like that relationship has been pretty solid, pretty good. But that would be one where, man, you get the best of all worlds, really, because of the relationship he has with Rob Brzezinski, because of the experience and exposure he has doing the job. I mean, that, those, everybody working together, that would be kind of an interesting one. But that name still does come up for me within conversations, whether it's realistic or not.
Man, I'm sure Sean Payton would just hate to see George Payton go. Like it would just be heartbreaking that the GM who was there before he arrived as head coach is now gone. And then there's just this power vacuum that reluctantly he would fill, like, Senator Palpatine in Star Wars, and just like, I don't want to do this, but I guess I will kind of come around and take it because we're in a tough spot. The season's around the corner. So I'll accept this responsibility reluctantly and hesitantly and go forward and rule this kingdom and to the best of my abilities. And thank you all for the confidence that you've instilled in me while I do this. But boy, George, just losing him, that would be just awful, awful.
There is a betting app out there somewhere on which you could have gotten really good odds against us mentioning Will McDonough and Senator Palpatine in the same podcast.
That's why you come here. You just never know what you're going to get.
That's exactly right. All right, let's get to draft time. It is time to actually start taking this stuff seriously. I want you guys to rank my top 100 mock drafts I've done the last month. Just let me know which one you think is the best. All right, Alec, who are they going to take, and why is it a safety from Oregon?
Yeah, I mean, everyone, it's so funny. The two most popular mock draft selections in the 2026 cycle are Fernando Mendoza to the Raiders at 1 and Dylan Thieneman, the Oregon safety, to the Vikings at 18. Not really sure why that is, other than the easy link of Vikings need a safety. Harrison Smith is on the fence. What should he do? Should he come back? Should he continue playing? If he were to not play, then you'd be replacing him with another white safety who has a really high character and is an explosive athlete. I think that's why the link exists. I mean, I would never rule that out as a possibility. I mean, you have a lot of people in this world that are really connected and have a lot of intel, but I just don't think the Vikings are going to take a safety because they need a safety. Like, I mean, Rob Brzezinski made this very clear. Like, he wants to stack the board as objectively as possible. What does that mean? It means we're not going to push a player up because they play a certain position or have certain qualities. And we're just going to take, if you have a need a year from now at tackle, or if you have a need a year from now at tight end or receiver and that player is available, then that might make sense. But this one, I'll just say this to you guys, like last year I was pretty convicted, like offensive line, interior, that made sense, whether it was going to be Zabel or Booker or Donovan Jackson. This one is tough for me. It's tough to really pin down what they're going to do. And I think some of that is because this draft is viewed like you've got 12 really first round caliber guys, and then the rest of them in the first round are kind of like first, second, you're riding the line, and so you can kind of go one way or another. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's tough to pin down, and I don't know what you guys would prefer them do, but it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I was like, we were talking about this a little bit last week, but I guess what I don't know, and you certainly know more than me, Alec, about this, is like the depth of each position. So if you don't go safety at 18, are there other opportunities later in the draft? If you don't go center, if you don't, whatever it is, like, what do you think is like going to factor into them looking at just the depth of the pools of talent at each position? And is there one that's shallower than others that you'd say, hey, maybe we do try to grab one now because we couldn't fill this need later? How does that shake out?
Yeah, I mean, offensive tackle is where my mind goes first. Like, there is a clump of probably 4 guys who are first-round caliber talents, and then the drop-off is you're talking about backup types, really borderline types. The defensive tackle class is a really interesting one. A lot of them are more nose tackle types, like mug up the line of scrimmage, but you're not getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback. So the question for me would be, do the Vikings, do they have in their evaluations feel like there is one at the very top that they could maximize from a pass rush standpoint? If so, maybe that's a possibility. I mean, cornerbacks, it's a pretty loaded class up and down. Receiver, it's a pretty loaded class up and down. Center, I think you're looking at probably the 3rd round. There's a clump of 5 guys that could potentially be starters that I would be pretty surprised if they didn't end up with one of those guys. So, safety, safety is a tough position because it's such an instinctive position. It's less size, speed, combine metrics lead to great player. So, again, that's where you lean on. If you're Rob Brzezinski, if you're the Vikings, if you're the scouting staff, does Brian Flores or Gerald Alexander, the new, DBs coach, feel like there is a guy at some point in the middle rounds that they can maximize? That's probably where you have those conversations. But I mean, I've said this, like if Jeremiah Love were available, the Notre Dame running back, you'd run to the podium.
Of course.
If Caleb Downs, the Ohio State safety, was available, you'd call it in as quick as possible. Outside of those 2 guys, there's not a ton of obvious ones for me after that.
Is it possible that Downs gets down there?
I would be very surprised. Yeah. I mean, Dallas just hired Christian Parker to be their defensive coordinator. He's a really sharp guy. Their system is not too far-fetched from Brian Flores in terms of the types of players they look at. So if Caleb Downs were to get to 12 into Dallas, I mean, when you're rebuilding that defense and they need secondary help, that's kind of a no-brainer. So I would be stunned if either of those guys, Jeremiah Love or Caleb Downs, were in play, which is funny because it's like you win those 4 games at the end, you feel good and, entering the offseason, but you always wonder, like, what if you're picking at 9 and then you would land a player who could be a cornerstone for the future? You always fight that conversation. And I'm never really a tank guy, but it does make you wonder sometimes.
I just think it's going to be touching when Rob Brzezinski pays homage to Kwesi by passing on a safety and then trading down, taking a safety late in the first round. I think
down
that'll
with
work
the
out
Bears and like,
yes.
Yeah.
I saw that as like a mock trade the other day. Like Vikings trade back to 25, let Chicago. Like, what are we thinking? Now, I will say this. Trading back in this draft and getting back to 24, 26, you're not going to do it in division, but like trading back makes sense if you can recoup another day 2 pick. The problem is, with everything I've just said, all of these other teams are very aware that there aren't a ton of players you're going to trade up for. Unless you have a very specific need. So that, it's a complicated kind of exercise in that way.
It's also fascinating to go back to our earlier conversation. Is Rob Brzezinski under these circumstances, is he going to be a wheeler dealer? Or is he going to just kind of play chalk because he doesn't want to screw anything up?
Yeah. I mean, Rob's background really in the draft room, and this was interesting to talk to him about at the owners' meetings, like he's been the trade guy in the sense that he's lined up the value. The Vikings have their draft value charts, and then you're negotiating with other teams who have their own draft value charts. And that's really he's been on the phone throughout the draft room. That's been his responsibility. That will no longer be his responsibility in the room. This time around, that will go to Matt Thomas and Emily Battis and Ryan Munnins. Like those 3 will handle that role. Rob will be more of the communicator type, but yeah, I mean, to answer the question, Jim, like it's hard to imagine you make some drastic move that would be eye-popping and potentially create a bunch of, skepticism in the aftermath. And I think Rob knows, like, they just need young talent. So whether it's safe picks, whether it's you get aggressive, whether you add more picks, like regardless, this team that is aging with a veteran roster needs to turn over and build through that as the pipeline. And he seems very aware of that, is what I'd say.
Good stuff from Alec. Thanks for joining us. We'll have Alec on a couple times a month as we go forward here at TalkNorth.com. Let's get a final thought from each of you on any topic you like. It can be NFL, draft, whatever. I want to remind our listeners we're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Service Studios. We also want to thank Onyx Hunt and Onyx Fish. Also want to introduce our new Vice President of Business Development, Tammy Henderson. It's going to be great for us. If you ever are at a live show and get a chance to chat with her, I highly recommend it. All right, John, give us a final thought.
I'll say I'm enjoying the early days of the Kyler Murray social media experience. Like, I mean, he's posting like Lamborghinis and like, all this flashy stuff. And like, we had the JJ McCarthy sort of thoughtful warrior type person, motivational speaker. We've had other quarterbacks who have come through that have done things on social media that probably are not recommended, or things like that. But like, this guy is flashy. And so, he clearly has a lot of belief in himself. And so we'll see how that plays out on the field, but it feels like a different type of personality at the quarterback position, and like likes the lights and all of the attention type of a thing. And, certainly will have a chip on his shoulder as well. But, it's been different from a lot of the quarterbacks who have come through here. Sam Darnold did not post photos of Ferraris and palm trees and things like that. And so
that's a weird looking pickup truck.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, this is new to me, and I'm gonna just soak it up and enjoy it.
Latrell Sprewell called it his guinea.
There we go.
He didn't call it Lamborghini. He called it his guinea.
Yep.
I'm expecting one of you guys to put on a 3-piece suit, flip the doors up of your whatever.
My Kia Optima hybrid. Yeah.
And sit out there in the North Loop and have a photographer with it.
I'm picking up my kid at the middle school. Like that's what I'm. That's how I do.
I mean, I think it would do numbers on social media. So
absolutely,
it would.
That's all I'm saying. My thought is this. I thought the Kirk Cousins to the Raiders is fascinating.
That's a good one.
I I know he has a lot of respect for Clint Kubiak. I think that played a big role in that decision, but it's going to be really interesting to me to see, like, are they going to be able to fend off Fernando Mendoza? I mean, I don't, it's got to be rare for a number one pick to sit for a long period of time. I mean, I can't imagine, like, the over-under for Kirk playing would have to be probably like 4 to 6 games, I would imagine, but I still think Kirk has some left in the tank, and in that system, like, I don't know. It'll be interesting. But the idea of those two together, those personalities, you want to talk about different from Lamborghinis outside, and it's interesting. But I thought that was a fun signing.
Mendoza will be borrowing Cole's slacks.
Cole's cash
from Kirk Cousins.
Can you transfer Cole's cash? I don't know. Like,
yeah. Well, we're going to find out. I love that sign. We all know Kirk has limitations, but for Kirk to go in knowing the role, they're not drafting the quarterback after they signed him, which is a nice change for him. Knowing the role, and I've covered one number one quarterback in my life as a beat writer, and that was Troy Aikman. And they had to take him off the field midseason because he was getting destroyed physically because the offensive line was bad, and they were afraid he was going to get beat up so badly he wasn't going to be a player. They had to take him off the field, and they played Steve Walsh. So I think starting Kirk and then seeing how it goes, seeing how Fernando's doing in practice, I think that's probably the way to go.
It's funny too because I think the reaction to the money and the contract. I mean, it's like 5 years, 170 million, but it's really 1 year, 20 or something. And it's almost like the, I don't know, the Kirk touch on it. Like it has to be, there's got to be the flair on it or 100%. Else it just doesn't track. I actually think part of it is actually, I do think there's like a strategy to it to where he can get out if he plays well, but it was going to be perceived that way regardless. And Mike McCartney, his agent, is spectacular.
He's going to be the first one who, maybe it'll be the Vikings. He'll sign a 1-day contract to retire a Viking, and it'll be a 37-year. $250 billion 1-day contract that voids, and all that stuff. Like, it's going to be incredible. Like, that's what he needs to do.
Good stuff, guys. That was fun. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks to everyone who listens and watches. We do appreciate it. And thanks, Alex. Thanks, John. We'll talk to you next week.